The emergency bay is silent for a heartbeat then. A crash echoes from the ICU. Monitors beep frantically as nurses scramble over spilled instruments. A masked man bursts through the sliding doors, his eyes wild, searching. Everyone freezes, uncertain. Amid the chaos, a quiet figure kneels beside a fallen patient, her hands steady, her voice calm as she guides the terrified orderly away from danger. No one notices the precise way she scans the room, the way she positions herself between the threat and the injured. Her uniform is ordinary, her demeanor unremarkable. Yet, something in the set of her shoulders hints at command, at experience, at readiness. As the intruder advances, the camera lingers on her steady gaze. A whisper of control underlined in every movement. Everyone underestimates her, but very soon, they will realize how wrong they were. The fluorescent lights hum softly over the ward, casting a sterile glow on pale walls and polished floors. The quiet rhythm of morning is punctuated by the beeping of monitors, the occasional rolling of cots, and the faint murmur of staff coordinating patient care. She moves among them without fanfare. Her footsteps measured, almost silent. Patients glance up as she checks vitals, adjusts for lines, and offers small, calm reassurances. Her presence is unremarkable. No dramatic gestures, no commanding voice. To anyone passing, she is just another nurse carrying out her duties. A new patient is wheeled in, groaning, eyes wide with fear. Colleagues fumble with paperwork and medical equipment, their movements hurried and clumsy. She bends close, steadying the patient with one hand on the stretcher and another lightly guiding their head. The grip is firm but gentle, precise. A trembling hand reaches for her, and she holds it, quietly grounding them in a way no one else notices. In the supply closet, a junior nurse struggles to open a locked cabinet. She glances over, eyebrows slightly raised, and steps across without a word. With a few deft movements, the lock clicks open. The junior nurse exhales in relief, staring for a moment, but says nothing. Others are too absorbed in the flurry of activity to notice. She pauses at the nurse's station, reviewing the charting board. Her eyes scan the numbers and patient details with a practiced efficiency. Small details, a slight rise in temperature, a subtle irregularity in a monitor line, catch her attention before anyone else. She adjusts the medication schedule with a careful hand, making minute corrections that will have consequences later. Though no one is aware, a group of interns enters, whispering, clearly uncertain. One stumbles over a cart, almost colliding with a patient's bed. She steps in silently, catching the cart with a precise motion that stops disaster in its tracks. The interns look at her briefly, perplexed, then continue on. Unaware of the calm authority she silently wields. From the window, sunlight strikes the corridor at a sharp angle, illuminating dust motes in the air. She watches them drift, almost unconsciously, her attention flicking between patient charts, staff movement, and distant sounds from the ER. There is a rhythm to her observation, a quiet scanning of the environment that seems habitual, but is deeply deliberate. A pager buzzes somewhere, but she ignores it, focusing instead on the small but crucial tasks: checking a drip, straightening a bed rail, ensuring oxygen lines are secure. Every movement is efficient, economical, nothing is wasted, nothing overdone. She is competent, meticulous, present but unnoticed. As the first signs of tension stir elsewhere, in the hospital, a brief alarm. The hurried footfalls of a nurse carrying an urgent report sheet tilts her head slightly, almost imperceptibly, her lips pressed into a thin line, eyes narrowing just enough to track the subtle shift in the ward. Others rush past, oblivious. She remains a calm center in the small storm, quietly noting everything. By the time the morning sun hits its peak, she has moved through the ward several times, unseen yet indispensable. Patients are stabilized, minor emergencies handled without fanfare. Her hands are steady, her voice low, her demeanor unremarkable, but every action carries authority, unseen, unclaimed. As she steps back to the station, the hum of the lights, the beeping monitors, and the soft shuffle of nurses provide a deceptive calm. No one suspects how quickly this quiet nurse could act if the situation demanded it. Today, the ward moves without disruption, but the small, precise competence she demonstrates is the seed of a quiet storm yet to come. The morning lull fades into a restless tension, subtle but undeniable. The ward feels the change before anyone can name it, a shift in rhythm, a barely audible hum of unease beneath the ordinary clamor of beeping monitors and rolling carts. The protagonist moves deliberately, her eyes scanning the corridor, noting the tiniest inconsistencies. A delivery arrives, late and unannounced. The courier's badge is unfamiliar, and he hesitates at the nurse's station. glancing around nervously before placing a sealed box on the counter. She watches quietly, noting the way his hands tremble, the way he keeps looking over his shoulder. No one else seems to notice. Nearby, a technician fumbles with a mobile ventilator. It beeps irregularly, demanding attention, and she kneels beside it without ceremony, adjusting settings with precision. The machine stabilizes instantly. The technician glances at her, perplexed, and mutters a thank you before scurrying off. She doesn't respond. Efficiency is her signature, not recognition. The ward phones buzz intermittently, lines crackling with hurried voices. A nurse whispers about a suspicious visitor spotted near the loading dock. Staff dismiss it, assuming a miscommunication. She lingers near the window, overlooking the back entrance, eyes narrowing as she notes the subtle signs. A shadow lingering, the way a vehicle idles too long. A reflection in the glass that doesn't belong. Her routine continues as usual, checking vitals, adjusting IVs, repositioning patients, but every movement carries an added layer of awareness. She subtly repositions a wheelchair to block an access point, shifts a tray of instruments to maintain clear sight lines, and moves a patient closer to the nurse's station. The adjustments are minor, almost imperceptible, yet they are deliberate, strategic. A young intern fumbles with a patient chart, noticing an irregular medication schedule. She glances over, lips pressed together, correcting it silently. The intern stares for a heartbeat, sensing competence, but unable to articulate it. Everyone else is too busy reacting to the rising tension to notice the method in her calm footsteps. Echo unusually loudly in the corridor. She pauses, listening. A faint metallic clink carries from the storage area, sound most would dismiss. Her hand hovers near her hip, not to draw attention, but ready to stabilize any situation. The awareness is quiet, restrained, and controlled. By midday, whispers of unusual activity spread among staff. Deliveries are delayed, alarms are misfiring intermittently, and the hospital's rhythm feels off-kilter. Colleagues voice concern, but their reactions are disorganized, anxious. She remains the quiet fulcrum of calm, moving among patients, ensuring stability without drawing notice. A senior doctor approaches, stressed, carrying a stack of urgent reports. Papers are shuffled hastily, and a few fall to the floor. She bends slightly, gathering them with careful hands, aligning the pages neatly before handing them back. Her movements are deliberate and precise. The doctor gives a distracted nod, unaware that he has just been steadied by someone with far more control than he realizes. Through all this, the protagonist observes, anticipates, and adjusts. Every small anomaly, a delayed supply, an unfamiliar face, a glitch in equipment registers in her mind as part of a larger pattern she alone perceives. Others see fragments. She sees the system, the undercurrent of potential chaos, and prepares silently. By the end of the shift, the ward is stable, patients attended to, minor disturbances corrected before they escalate. Yet in the quiet corners of her mind, she knows the small ripples she noticed today could become waves, and when they do, she will be ready not for recognition, but for control. The ward hums with routine as afternoon light filters through the blinds, casting long, pale stripes across the linoleum floors. Nurses move quickly but methodically, patients rest quietly, and the beeping of monitors keeps a steady rhythm. The calm is fragile, like a thin layer of ice over turbulent water. It begins subtly, a shadow, moving past the sliding doors of the ER. A figure that doesn't belong. Staff glance up briefly, dismissing it as a delivery or maintenance worker. She notices immediately. Her gaze sharpens, scanning the corridor, noting the pace, posture, and intent behind the shadow. Something is off. A loud crash suddenly shatters the relative quiet. A masked intruder bursts through the double doors leading to the main ward. A metal cart clatters to the floor, sending papers and equipment flying. Patients scream, some frozen in terror. Nurses shout over the commotion, unsure how to react. The intruder is armed, unpredictable, and clearly in control of the situation. If only for now, she doesn't freeze. Instead, she instinctively positions herself near the center of the ward, quietly assessing exits, entrances, and the positions of staff and patients. Her movements are calm, deliberate, each step measured. The other nurses move instinctively, clustering together, shielding patients, their fear obvious. She notices their mistakes without saying a word, subtly correcting trajectories and placement through gestures alone. The intruder sweeps the ward with a menacing gaze, stopping at each bed, brandishing a weapon. Panic ripples outward. A nurse stumbles, almost colliding with a patient. She steps silently, positioning her body to shield the patient, while gently guiding the nurse aside, with one controlled hand. The moment passes unnoticed by anyone except her. The masked figure approaches a vital patient, one who is unconscious and connected to multiple monitors. Staff around them falter. Without hesitation, she steps closer, not to confront, but to create a barrier. Her stance is unassuming yet unyielding, her presence asserting control without words. The intruder pauses, slightly unsettled by her calm. Nearby, the phone lines buzz frantically. Colleagues are trying to call security, but connections are slow, panic-ridden hands fumbling over buttons. She intercepts, guiding the staff through a series of silent actions, barricading doors with equipment, directing a stretcher to block access to a hallway, adjusting monitors so alarms will alert the nearest nurse station. Every movement is precise, efficient, and intentional. A patient begins to cry out, attracting the intruder's attention. She steps between them quietly, leaning low, speaking softly to soothe, but also to control the space. Her voice is calm, measured, carrying authority without a raised tone. The intruder's eyes flicker toward her, curiosity mixed with irritation. He senses something different, something deliberate, but cannot yet name it. The ward phone buzzes again, now with security confirming delay. The intruder's patience thins. He makes a sharp turn, approaching the central corridor where she stands. She moves with subtle shifts in stance, guiding him indirectly away from the most vulnerable patients, her hands never leaving his path of potential threat. Every step is calculated, every gesture measured. She positions herself to cover the largest open spaces, arranging staff and patients so that the intruder's line of sight is controlled, limiting his options without confrontation. Her competence is invisible to most. Yet every action contains the foundation of control. A nurse whispers to a colleague, "Who is she? How does she stay so calm?" The answer is unspoken. Only she knows the depth of her experience, the training, the instincts, the quiet authority honed through years that no one in this ward could possibly suspect. By the time the intruder pauses near the nurse station, the ward has been subtly shifted into a position that maximizes safety for patients and staff, all without her uttering a command. The intruder surveys the room, calculating, uncertain. The air is thick with tension. One wrong move could spark chaos, but she remains a calm fulcrum amid the storm. Her presence a silent warning that someone in this ordinary-looking nurse's uniform is quietly in control. Every eye in the ward is on the intruder now, but all the true planning, all the subtle adjustments, and all the restraint rests with her. She waits, watching, anticipating, ready for the moment when the threat will test her beyond silent observation. The masked intruder advances, his movements sharp, erratic, and unpredictable. Staff scatter instinctively, creating a chaotic ripple across the ward. Patients scream, some thrashing in panic, others frozen with fear. The air feels thick, heavy, as if the tension itself presses against the walls. She doesn't move like the others. Her stance is low, centered, and deliberate, hands relaxed but ready. She scans every angle, noting potential hazards, escape routes, and lines of sight. Her eyes flick to a dropped tray of instruments, a tipped foot stand, and a wheelchair left in the corridor. Each could be weapon, shield, or obstruction. She calculates their use silently. The intruder spots a nurse trying to shield a patient and lunges toward her. Without hesitation, she positions herself between the two, a calm, unspoken barrier. Her body language communicates authority, even without words. The intruder halts, surprised by the composed defiance, and recalibrates his approach. Nearby, a junior nurse reaches for a fire extinguisher. Trembling, she places a hand gently over the nurse's wrist, redirecting the action not to restrain, but to guide safely. She whispers nothing, yet the instruction is clear. The nurse obeys instinctively, placing herself out of harm's way. The intruder swings toward the nurse's station, knocking over charts and scattering supplies. She reacts with precision, stepping to the side, guiding the chaos into controlled pathways. A fallen clipboard slides across the floor toward the intruder. She intercepts it with a calculated push, deflecting him subtly, without drawing attention to herself. A patient connected to a ventilator begins to cough, triggering an alarm. Staff freeze, unsure how to respond. She kneels beside the patient, adjusting the tubing with careful hands, while simultaneously signaling another nurse to move quietly behind a counter. The intruder's attention flickers to the alarm, distracted by its abrupt blare, allowing her to shift both staff and patient out of immediate danger. The intruder's frustration grows. He lunges again, this time toward a larger section of the ward. She steps forward, this time not blocking, but channeling his movement, Staff and patients are subtly relocated to safe zones. Every maneuver is silent, subtle, her authority revealed. Indirectly, through the effectiveness of her actions rather than confrontation. A sudden crash draws his eyes. He had tripped over a chair she had positioned almost imperceptibly. His balance wavers. She seizes the moment, maintaining control without aggression, keeping him off center, unsettled. Every motion she makes conserves energy, minimizes risk, and maintains safety for those around her. The intruder yells, waving his weapon wildly. Panic surges among the staff. She steps calmly, hands raised in a non-threatening manner, her presence commanding enough to pause his swing, just long enough for a nurse to quietly usher a patient into a nearby alcove. He spins, caught off guard by the coordination and control that seem to emanate from this quiet figure. For a few suspended seconds, the ward is a tableau of controlled chaos. Screaming patients, shouting staff, and one calm center moving through it all with precision. No one speaks, no one yells commands, yet everything shifts according to a silent orchestration. By the end of the first confrontation, the intruder is agitated but unharmed, the staff shaken but intact, and the patients secure. No one has fully noticed her methods only. The results, her quiet competence, her restraint, and her unspoken authority, have prevented catastrophe. As she steps back slightly, eyes still locked on the intruder, she calculates the next moves. Knowing this confrontation is only the beginning, her control is real, but the threat is far from neutralized. The stakes have risen, and the ward now operates under a tense anticipation she alone perceives. The ward is tense, every heartbeat amplified by the distant beeping of monitors and the muffled cries of frightened patients. The intruder has taken the measure of the space, his movements sharper, his eyes darting for weaknesses. The first confrontation was a test, and now she knows the threat is more dangerous than she first assessed. She takes a deliberate step back, surveying the layout. Hallways, entrances, exits, alcoves, equipment placements, all are part of her mental map. With a few subtle gestures, she begins shifting the environment without drawing attention. A rolling cart is nudged slightly to block a corridor. A fallen force stand is repositioned to create a natural barrier. A stretcher is angled near the ER entrance to obstruct direct access. Each adjustment is minor in isolation but adds up to a strategic perimeter. A junior nurse looks to her uncertainly, whispering about what to do next. She raises a hand just slightly, guiding them toward a safer corner. No words, no authority asserted. The nurse moves exactly as intended. She repeats the motion for another staff member, creating a chain of quiet compliance. Each movement is efficient, deliberate, and understated. The intruder notices the subtle shifts. He approaches a doorway, intending to surge forward, but hesitates. The path is constricted. He steps back, scanning the ward, realizing his options are narrowing without any overt interference. He is unsettled. The calm, unassuming nurse is orchestrating control behind the scenes, her influence invisible but unmistakable in its effect. She moves patients in the most vulnerable rooms, guiding them quietly behind beds and equipment. Monitors are adjusted so alarms will alert neighboring stations if breached. Staff are repositioned to maximize visibility while minimizing exposure. Every action is calculated. Every gesture has purpose. She does not speak above a whisper. Her restraint is deliberate, a signal that authority does not always need volume to assert itself. A phone rings sharply. Security updates have not yet arrived, and panic begins to ripple among the remaining staff. She gestures toward the phones, ensuring they remain operational, while simultaneously redirecting staff to maintain clear lines of sight. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is reactive. Every move is proactive. A silent choreography designed to contain the threat until support can arrive. The intruder grows impatient. He makes a feint toward a supply closet, testing the boundaries she has set. She steps slightly into his path, not to confront directly, but to guide him away from patients. His eyes flick toward her, suspicion growing, but she does not move aggressively. Instead, she allows him the illusion of control while maintaining the upper hand. A minor alarm triggers in the background, a door sensor, but it is quickly recalibrated, unnoticed by the intruder. She had anticipated this, ensuring that small disruptions serve as distractions for him while remaining protective measures for the ward. The staff begin to notice the slight order imposed amidst chaos, a structure they cannot articulate but instinctively rely upon. By the end of this tactical shift, the ward feels less vulnerable, though no one fully realizes why. The intruder's momentum has been disrupted, his unpredictability constrained by measures they cannot see. She stands at the center of it all, a calm, measured presence, Her authority is quiet but absolute, revealed not through words, but through the environment she has silently commanded. Her eyes flick to the clock. The next wave of escalation will come soon, but for now, the ward is strategically contained. Staff and patients are safer than they realize, and she, still underestimated, remains the unseen hand guiding every movement, every placement, every measure of control. The intruder's frustration has turned into aggression. His movements are sharper now, deliberate and threatening, as he sweeps the ward with a gaze that seeks control. The earlier constraints she subtly imposed have slowed him, but his intent has hardened. He will not be easily contained. A nurse screams from a corner, her hands shielding a patient as he swings toward them. She steps in without hesitation, placing herself between the intruder and the vulnerable patient. Her body language is calm yet authoritative, commanding attention without raising her voice. The intruder falters for a fraction of a second, just enough for her to redirect the panic away from the patient. Nearby, ventilator alarm blares, startling a patient who thrashes involuntarily. Staff react impulsively, unsure how to calm the situation. She kneels quickly beside the patient, adjusting the tubing and applying gentle pressure to keep the masks secure. Simultaneously, she signals a nearby nurse to move quietly into the hallway to block the intruder's path. Her communication is nonverbal, precise, and effective. The intruder notices these subtle interventions. His movements become more erratic, his frustration evident. But each action he takes is anticipated and countered indirectly. A tray of instruments is positioned in his path. He trips slightly, but regains balance. A chair is shifted almost imperceptibly to create a narrow corridor, limiting his approach. Every adjustment is calculated, invisible to most. Yet it shapes the environment entirely in her favor. She guides patients into safe zones with minimal disruption. One patient clutches at her sleeve in terror. She kneels to their level, speaking softly, steadying their breathing, her touch firm but comforting. Even in the chaos, there is a sense of order, and it emanates from her. Staff begin to notice patterns, routes that keep the intruder away from the most vulnerable, defensive positions that seem to appear naturally. None understand how this calm nurse orchestrates it, but instinctively they follow her lead. Her authority is indirect, but absolute in its effect. The intruder attempts to take a patient hostage, grabbing at a stretcher. She steps in, not aggressively, but with calculated presence, maneuvering his arm aside, guiding him toward a less populated area. The tension is palpable. One wrong movement could escalate into tragedy, yet she remains composed, every action measured, precise, and restrained. A minor alarm triggers near the supply closet, drawing his attention. She had anticipated this distraction, positioning staff and patients so that it buys her a few critical seconds. The intruder's focus shifts, creating space for her to guide another patient out of danger. Time stretches. The intruder is increasingly frustrated, his energy spent in futile attempts to dominate the ward. She watches him carefully, noting patterns in his aggression, calculating next moves without drawing notice. Her experience, honed in previous crises far from this hospital, informs every decision. A subtle shift in the intruder's stance signals his next move. She steps lightly, adjusting a patient bed and redirecting staff silently, creating controlled pathways that limit his options. The chaos is still present, but she has contained its worst potential outcomes. By the end of the escalation, the intruder is agitated, off balance, and increasingly isolated within the ward. Patients are unharmed, staff are protected, and her presence has quietly established order from the storm. Her restraint, tactical foresight, and indirect authority define the battlefield, though no one fully comprehends her capacity yet. She pauses for a moment, scanning the ward, calculating the next step. The moral choice looms: how far can she act, without crossing a line she cannot afford to breach? The stakes are higher now. The intruder's unpredictability has peaked, and the real test of restraint, strategy, and moral judgment is about to begin. The ward is tense, suffused with the sharp metallic scent of fear and antiseptic. The intruder is cornered, but his desperation has made him dangerous. A patiented child in the corner bed begins to cry out, drawing the intruder's gaze. His hands tighten around his weapon, threatening the most vulnerable in the ward. She pauses, assessing the situation with precision. One wrong move could trigger violence. She can act aggressively and neutralize the threat immediately, but doing so could endanger the child or another patient nearby. Her mind calculates probabilities, paths, angles, and outcomes. The choice is stark: immediate containment at potential cost, or patience with risk. Her hands hover, not over any weapon, but over the nearest line of defense: a rolling cart, an IV stand, a repositioned bed. Every item is a tool if needed. She can use them to shield, distract, or redirect, but always with restraint, never to harm unnecessarily. The ward is her chessboard. Every piece must be considered carefully. A nurse glances at her, whispering, "What do we do?" She shakes her head slightly, almost imperceptibly, signaling them to stay calm and follow her silent guidance. She cannot afford panic, not now. Her moral compass is clear. Protect life first, dominate second. The child whimpers again. The intruder's attention wavers. He notices the minor disruption and shifts focus. She seizes the moment. Kneeling slightly, she guides the child out of immediate danger, using her body and gestures to communicate calm. Every micro-movement matters. Her restraint is an active decision, not inaction. The intruder surges toward another patient. She steps smoothly into his path, directing him along a calculated corridor of her own making. He is forced into the least harmful path, away from those most at risk. She does not strike. She does not shout. She simply manipulates the environment and controls the flow of his movement with quiet authority. A monitor alarm blares nearby. She subtly redirects his attention, buying more time. Every patient she moves, every barrier she positions, comes at a mental cost. Each decision weighs heavily. The moral burden is palpable. She is not acting for glory or recognition, only for survival. And the responsibility sits heavily on her shoulders. Minutes stretch. Staff follow her lead, uncertain why, but trusting instinctively. The intruder is contained, but the solution is delicate. One mistake, one rash action, could tip the balance toward tragedy. She chooses patience, calm, and precision over brute force. Her restraint itself becomes the shield protecting everyone by the end of the chapter. The immediate threat to the most vulnerable patients has been mitigated. The intruder is contained, though not yet neutralized. She has made choices that prioritize life, even when more aggressive actions could have ended the crisis faster. The weight of her decisions is silent, but immense, and the quiet competence of her moral judgment is the real authority revealed to those who notice. She steps back slightly, allowing staff and patients to recover, while maintaining observation. Recognition is unnecessary. This is not about being seen. The cost of restraint, of thoughtful action, has been paid, and it will echo through the coming confrontation. The intruder has grown visibly frustrated, his movements jittery, his patience fraying. He realizes the ward is no longer a chaotic space he can dominate. The subtle barriers, the quietly shifted patience, and the unseen positioning of staff have cornered him psychologically and physically. Yet he remains dangerous, capable of sudden violence. She steps forward, calm, assessing the final options. Every doorway, every hallway, every piece of equipment has been accounted for. The intruder approaches the central corridor, his weapon raised, scanning for weaknesses. She does not move aggressively. Instead, she positions herself near the path he is most likely to take. Hands relaxed, stance steady. Her presence alone redirects his motion. A nurse whispers to another, asking if he'll strike. She shakes her head slightly, focusing on the intruder. She knows the outcome will come from timing, not force. She has anticipated every possible reaction, calculating angles, escape routes, and distractions. Patience, precision, and restraint are her tools, not confrontation. The intruder makes a sudden lunge toward a patient bed. She steps smoothly, placing herself just in the line of motion, subtly guiding him into a narrow corridor she had prepared moments before. He stumbles slightly, off balance. Staff quietly block exits behind him without alerting him to the strategy. The corridor, the patients, and the minimal furniture now contain him like a predator trapped by invisible barriers. A minor alarm sounds. A monitor she had intentionally left active, and her gaze never wavers. A nurse, following her silent cue, moves behind him, ready to restrict access without physical aggression. The intruder spins, trying to regain control, but every path he chooses has been anticipated and constrained. She kneels slightly, directing the most vulnerable patients behind beds and equipment. Her movements are quiet, controlled, and deliberate, each action minimizing risk while asserting authority indirectly. The intruder's frustration peaks. He swings toward the nearest exit, only to find himself funneled into a narrow corridor with no easy escape. He pauses, realizing the ward has shifted against him, subtly, without confrontation. Every patient safe, every staff member strategically positioned, all orchestrated through her restraint and foresight. Her authority is revealed not through violence, but through the results of her actions. containment, control, and precision. Time seems to stretch. The intruder assesses the situation, cornered, tense, and uncertain. He makes one last attempt to seize control, but her calm presence and silent commands of the environment leave him no options. A quick maneuver by a staff member, guided by her silent cues, closes the final path. He is neutralized not by force, but by the culmination of her tactical restraint, planning, and silent authority. The ward falls silent. Patients cry softly, staff exhale, and monitors beep in their usual rhythm. She moves through the space, checking patients, straightening beds, adjusting IV. Her hands remained calm, her voice low, guiding recovery without drama or spotlight. No one congratulates her explicitly. The staff recognize relief and competence in a quiet, instinctual way, but they cannot articulate the depth of her authority. Her actions speak louder than words, yet remain understated. The final confrontation has ended. The intruder is contained. The ward is safe. And through it all, the quiet nurse has maintained restraint, moral clarity, and tactical precision, their lives preserved not through spectacle, but through disciplined, calculated control. She steps back to the nurse's station, glancing at the monitors, and then the recovering patients. Her presence is unassuming. She has done everything without recognition, without display. The storm has passed, but the calm she created endures. The hospital is quieter now, but the air remains thick with tension. Staff moves slowly, checking vitals, assisting patients, and tidying the ward. Some exchange whispers, glancing at each other. The residual fear of the intruder is still palpable. The adrenaline that surged through the morning is fading, leaving fatigue and relief in its place. Emergency response teams arrive, moving quickly but efficiently. They sweep the ward, escort the intruder away, and secure the area. Officers and paramedics ask questions, take notes, and record statements. Staff answer mechanically, still processing the shock. Through it all, she remains calm, observing from the center of the storm with quiet precision. A nurse approaches her hesitantly, eyes wide. You saved them," she murmurs. She nods but says nothing. Recognition is unnecessary. The outcomes speak for themselves. Patients are safe, injuries minimized, and the intruder neutralized all, without chaos tipping beyond control. She walks among the patients, checking oxygen lines, adjusting IVs, smoothing blankets. The doctor looks at her briefly, a mix of gratitude and confusion on his face, but says nothing. No one fully grasps the scope of her competence. She does not seek acknowledgement. Her priority is the patients, the ward, and the quiet restoration of order. In the corridors, staff quietly reorganized equipment, replaced displaced monitors, and stabilized medical supplies. The chaos of earlier hours leaves faint marks, scuffed floors, scattered charts, overturned chairs, but the work of returning the ward to routine continues steadily. She moves alongside them, a subtle anchor, guiding recovery through silent competence rather than instruction. A patient's parent approaches, panic still lingering in their expression. She kneels, adjusting their child's oxygen mask, whispering calm instructions. They nod, reassured, but they will never fully understand how she orchestrated safety and control without a word. Outside, the sun is beginning to set, casting long shadows across the hospital courtyard. The ward is functional again, the noise of life resuming in muted form. The intruder is gone, security protocols now in place. Yet the calm she has restored is not loud or celebratory. It is a quiet, heavy, earned peace. She steps back to the nurse's station, surveying the ward one last time. Monitors beep steadily. Patients breathe calmly. Staff move with renewed rhythm. Nothing is perfect. Perfection never exists, but the worst has been prevented. Her work is invisible, subtle, but absolute. Recognition, she knows, is not the measure of success. The lives preserved, the chaos contained, and the restraint exercised are what matter.
Night falls softly over the hospital. The corridors are dim, lit by the steady hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional glow of monitors. The ward feels different now, calmer, heavier, as though the events of the day have left a silent imprint in the air. She moves slowly through the rooms, checking each patient one last time. Her hands are steady, her touch deliberate. No one calls her name. No one praises her. The staff, exhausted and still shaken, are absorbed in routine tasks. Patients rest quietly, unaware of the precise orchestration that kept them safe. She does not seek acknowledgement. Her work was never about being seen. In the nurse's station, she straightens charts and organizes equipment, each action meticulous. A junior nurse glances at her, recognition fleeting in their eyes, but she offers only a nod before returning to her tasks. The subtle authority she wields is understood only in fragments by those around her. They sense it, even if they cannot name it. The final monitors beep in their steady rhythm, punctuating the calm. She pauses near the window, looking out at the hospital courtyard, the city bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. Her face is composed, reflective, and quiet. There is no triumph in her expression, only the heavy satisfaction of duty fulfilled and of control exercised responsibly. Footsteps echo faintly behind her. Staff begin leaving for the night, exchanging muted greetings. The ward will continue its rhythm long after she departs, and life will proceed as usual. No headlines, no accolades. The intruder is gone. The patients are safe. The ward endures. She takes a final glance at the central corridor, remembering the chaos that once filled it, the fear that once gripped the staff and patients. The subtle shifts, the calculated movements, the restraint, and the silent authority, all of it now blends into memory. As she steps quietly into the stairwell, leaving the ward behind, the camera lingers on the empty hall. The faint hum of monitors and soft lighting create a reflective calm. The day's events have passed, yet the quiet strength she exercised lingers in the atmosphere, invisible but undeniable. She disappears into the night without recognition, without spectacle. The ward is restored, the threat neutralized, and the calm heavy with meaning. The storm is over, but her quiet competence, discipline, and restraint remain, a steady undercurrent that no one may ever fully comprehend. The screen fades to black. Silence.